they are proposals. They're not formal proposals. But what I'm trying to understand with this, Chris, if we get the idea, is how everyday people would participate in it. Who enacts it? OpenAI or government? But you're talking about people whose lives are impacted themselves by AI participating in it. Explain it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let me take a step back. And Caroline, thanks for having me. So first and foremost, what this document really reflects is the work and thinking of OpenAI's researchers, the folks who are really building and innovating this AI technology. And I think they understand and recognize that this is technology that's on par with historic general purpose technologies of the past, the wheel, the printing press, the combustion engine, electricity. Each of those ultimately drove the human condition forward by driving economic progress. But every time one of these technologies came along, there was obviously challenges that came with it. And so what this document really is attempting to do is to put out some concepts and ideas that are really as transformative as the actual underlying technology. And so it's divided into two sections. One section really deals with an open economy, which is what you are talking about. How can we make sure AI is free, fair, safe? How can people participate as much as possible? And, the sovereign wealth fund idea, is something that we really took from what we had seen in Alaska with the Alaska Permanent Fund, where the entire population of Alaska gets to participate in the economics of the fossil fuel extraction in Alaska. But ultimately, there's a whole range of ideas. One of I think at the core of all of this, though, particularly on the economic opportunity piece, is the understanding that AI needs to be understood as a right that everyone in this country, everyone in the world, has at least the opportunity to be able to participate in. And that's really what's fundamental to this.
I mean, Chris, a public or sovereign wealth fund is a very specific proposal. Have you discussed that idea with anyone within the administration? Who within the administration have you discussed that with?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specific names, which may be a shock to you, but we have certainly had those conversations with folks both in the administration. You obviously have the Trump accounts, which is a version of some kind of a fund. I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've probably met with a dozen, 2 dozen, actually, as I think about it, members of the United States Senate, where we've been talking about these types of concepts. And I think what's really going on right now is that there is a growing awareness from policymakers, particularly in Washington, D.C., of just how fast this technology is accelerating, the scale that it's going to be impacting all of us, and an interest and desire to really up-level the nature of the policy conversations. To date, the conversations have really been almost binary. On one hand, there is an approach, keep your hands off, don't worry, everything's going to be great. On the other possible extreme, there is the doomer view, which is that this is technology that's so powerful, only a small number of people should control it. We're really trying to put out a different approach, and this approach is based on actually offering solutions that are going to meet the technology where the technology is, but doing it in a way that's inherently small d democratic, working through the democratic process to actually identify the ideas that will allow this technology to benefit as many people as possible. And that's really what we're trying to put out here today. And this is a conversation starter, as you were alluding to. We don't pretend to have all of the answers. Certainly people have smarter ideas. People will pressure test these. But we do think we need to open up that proverbial Overton window so that we begin having these conversations now so that we can identify the solutions quickly, given where the technology is going.
The now is interesting.
Yeah.
Was the now prompted by this growing awareness that this isn't very popular with the general public right now? Or is it a now because you've got something coming, the models are updating, an IPO is on the verge, and therefore you need to get ahead of the policy perspective too?
It's really the latter and not the former. I mean, certainly when you talk about and you look at the underlying data, those who use AI tend to have a pretty positive to very positive perspective on it. And, we're nearing 1 billion folks who are using this on a regular basis. So as more and more people use AI, obviously perceptions of it, understanding how it's going to impact education, healthcare, their daily lives grows. But this is really at the core, and again, this came from our researchers who are really understanding where this technology is going and how quickly it's moving in that direction, that we do need to begin to identify those ideas, those solutions, those concepts that are going to meet the technology where it is. I mean, I've said this, but this technology is transformative. We're going to need policy ideas that are equally transformative. And if I could, I mean, maybe an analogy here is the New Deal. And I don't mean the New Deal in a sense that we believe that there's big government solutions for this. But what the New Deal ultimately recognized was that as technology drove industrialization, there really needed to be a calibration or perhaps a recalibration between the allocation of capital and labor to make sure that the social contract was really in balance.
And you want labor to have more of a voice.
That's how we're thinking. I'm sorry.
You want Labour to have more of a voice, Chris. And what's interesting is others are speaking to this too. Jamie Dimon putting out his letter to shareholders today, also talking about his view that this is moving quickly. It could eliminate some jobs. And his firm has got definitive plans on how we can support and redeploy our affected workforce. How is other business going to play a role, Chris? And also, what are the governments doing? You look at this from a global perspective. Where is doing this right versus the US?
Caroline, it's a great question, and I think you can see interesting pockets around the world. You know, when I travel to Asia, Japan, or Korea, you see a real focus on driving up AI literacy, raising the amount of people in those countries who actually understand how to use AI. I think Japan has a goal of 80% of its country are graduating students literate by 2030. You go to places like Estonia, which has always been a digital forward country. They're building AI into their actual government infrastructure. Greece, we've spent a lot of time with the Prime Minister of Greece and his government. He's in the process of building AI into their public education system. And so you're seeing pockets of this. But again, I think part of what's behind this release of this particular document is our belief that we really do need to scale up the kinds of conversations that are taking place, so that we're actually able to meet this technology where it is and moreover where it's going.
Chris, there's been some reporting from The Information that your CFO, Sarah Fryer, has some concerns about the spending plan over the next few years and the reality of a timeline to IPO this year in disagreement with Sam Altman, your CEO. The report also details that Sarah Fryer was excluded from some finance or investor meetings as a result of that disagreement. What can you tell us, please?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm actually blessed and privileged to work with an incredible team, not just in terms of the talent, but how well everyone really works together. Perhaps the greatest validation of both the team, our researchers, and really our overall strategy is that last week, as you all covered, right, we announced the single largest raise in history, $122 billion. And at the core of that, I think, was the validation of our focused, our really laser-focused strategy, which is on compute. Compute is really Sam's insight. He deserves enormous credit for this. He was there long before anyone else, that it is the most finite and most precious resource when it comes to the intelligence age. And we have focused a lot of our work on making sure that we have access to that compute. That compute drives a flywheel. Right? For every quantum of compute we get, we effectively get a 3x in revenue. And it works the following way. Compute drives innovation, what our researchers do. That then leads to more tools. Those tools lead to more users, right? We were the first to 10 million, first to 100 million, approaching.
I think we've lost Chris there.
Approaching.
Chris, you're fine. Your Zoom froze for a moment there, but I'm going to go back to my question. Sarah Fryer was or was not excluded from meetings because of a disagreement on strategy with Sam Altman?
We just raised $122 billion, and Sarah Fryer was at the center of all of those meetings, pulling all of those conversations together. It's awesome to see the teamwork that exists between her, Sam, Fiji, our head of applications. And as I said, it's I get to work with a dream team in terms of talent and how well everyone works together. And again, $122 billion. It's not the amount of money, although that is a large amount of money. It is the fact that you've had probably one of the most impressive cap tables in the world. Take a look at our business strategy, take a look at our leadership, take a look at our researchers, and really give us a huge vote of confidence. I mean, think about where we are from a revenue perspective. In 2024, I'm doing this off the top of my head. I think we had $1 billion in revenue a quarter. We're now doing $2 billion in revenue a month. I mean, you just haven't seen growth numbers like that historically.
Let's talk about the talent, because it's got bigger. And there has been reshuffling, and our thoughts go to those with health issues, particularly Fiji as she takes a step back, Chris. But TBPN, That's coming under your leadership.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm so
media?
excited for this, Caroline. I am so excited for this. I'm excited for it for two reasons. On one hand, these guys, Jordy and John and their whole team, do as good a job as anyone out there in unpacking the why and the how behind technology and explicitly AI. I think folks come on to other media outlets. I mean, you guys do an incredible job of breaking news and scooping news. What these guys do is really break down ideas and scoop out what's behind those ideas. And at a time, and this even relates to the beginning of this conversation on the document that we put out today, at a time when we really need to be scaling how the world understands AI, these folks do one of the best jobs out there. We want to give them the resources so that their audience grows. And the second point here is that I'm able to bring in-house, really, in my view, what is the leading agency when it comes to being content forward and digital first. A lot of analogies have been used. I mean, Bloomberg is obviously owned by a financial services company and then has a media entity. In terms of analogies out there, I think there's actually a different analogy here that's a little bit more applicable, and that is you think about Apple under Steve Jobs in the 1980s and early 90s. They actually brought in Chiat Day, which had been their outside marketing agency, and created something called the Apple Media Lab, and it really became a model for how to build in-house marketing in an age when a lot of that marketing was done through what we would now call traditional advertising. Yeah. We're in a different age today. Digital is at the center of the conversation. And I see this as analogous to that, but for the digital age. We're bringing in, really, I think, the best agency in the world to help us do the best job we possibly can do as we continue to grow in terms of how we market and communicate. So I'm totally pumped for this. I'm really excited.